Today I'm going to show you how to do soap bubble photography and get some shots like this. Soap bubble photography is pretty cool, and you don't need too many specialized items to do it. I'm going to walk you through my entire process from getting average photographs like this to great photographs like this. First of all, with your camera gear, find out which lens you have that has the shortest minimum focusing distance. If you've only got wide angle lenses, you might have to get really close, and if you're only a couple of centimeters away, as that bubble bursts, you'll definitely get some residue on your lens. So if you do only have wide angle lenses, be aware of this and have something that you can clean your lens without scratching it. I'm going to start off with my 24 to 17mm f4 from Zeiss, which is my slight upgrade from the kit lens. But if you only have the kit lens, its minimum focusing distance is around about 30 centimeters with the Sony a7 III. Now I was going to get a macro lens for this, but obviously as everyone's stuck indoors at the moment, it has been hired out for the foreseeable future from my local hire shop. But I do have my extension tubes and my 85mm, which work really well together. But if you do have a dedicated macro lens, that will be fantastic, and that would be the best option. With the kit lens, I'll have to crop in on the final image, but with the macro lens, or say with the extension tubes, I'll be able to get much closer to those bubbles. In turn, that'll mean I'll be able to use the whole of the image. Now, if you have a basic flash like this one, and this is the YN565EX from Yongnuo, you can get some remote triggers for this that work really well. I have these two, and you have the one that goes on top of the camera and then the one that goes underneath the flash. These work really well. They take 2 AA batteries each, and I've never had a problem with them. I also have the AD200 from Godox with the X1 trigger. As long as you can get your flash off the camera, you'll get some great results. Another thing, if you do have just a small flash head like this, and your camera has a built-in flash on the top, you can set it to slave mode, and then you can get it to fire off once it sees the flash on your camera. That's another way around buying that wireless remote system. Also, to get better results, you will need to diffuse the light, but I'll go into that later and show you how to do it. Now, if you do want to follow along, I've put a shopping list in the description below where you can get all of these items. They don't cost too much, and if you have your camera and your lens, you don't really need to add too much to it. Now, if you don't have a flash and don't want to spend a lot of money trying this, I have a setup you can try later on in the tutorial. But as you probably have a little bit of time on your hands at the moment, you might as well keep watching all the way through to see all of the different ways to get shots like this. So I've just set my camera, the background and the surface up. What I have is an old t-shirt, and this is to stop any reflections off this shiny granite work surface. Then I've got my camera on the tripod, I've got the 24 to 70mm f4. Then I've got the Godox X1 trigger, and that's going to talk to my AD200. Then I've got my wireless remote, and all this will do is whenever I press this button, the camera will take a photograph. And last of all, I've got my background, and that's just a big 5-in-1 reflector. I've put it on the black side, so what that'll do is make sure that the background of the shot is completely black. Next, we're going to work on the solution that we're going to use to make the bubbles. I have some washing up liquid, I have some glycerin, I'm going to mix them both with water. And it's going to be 3 parts water, 1 part washing up liquid, and then a little bit of glycerin in there to make it a little bit thicker. Now for this amount, I'll only put like a teaspoon of glycerin in. If the bubbles pop too quickly, then I'll put some more glycerin in, but you only need a little bit to make the liquid a little bit thicker. Then all you need to do is mix it up. Now, if you're wondering what glycerin is, it's basically like a thickening agent, and you can get it from the baking department in any supermarket or most pharmacies. So I got this, and it was next to nothing. I think £2. Now, when I first made this solution, I was thinking that I was going to use the glass to get the bubble out of the top. But what I found was, if I get my straw, and try and create some bubbles, you get loads of bubbles in there, and it's really hard to get just one out of the top. And the solution for this is the back cap of an old lens. This is one from a Canon lens that I used to own, and it's perfect. There's no holes in it. I can put the solution in here, and then you'll get a bubble out of the top. So I'll show you now. You can create one bubble, and it'll stay there for quite a while. So this is one good thing as well. What you can do is blow a bubble into it and test it. If it pops really quickly, you just put some more glycerin or some more washing up liquid in it. And if it holds like it is now, that's great. It's enough time for me to take a photograph of it before it pops. Like that. When you have your solution in the lens cap, if you put the straw straight in and down to the bottom and blow bubbles into it, you get lots of bubbles. That's not what you want. So go in with a really low angle with the straw. And as the bubble starts to expand, bring the straw out of the solution. So I'll do that once more. So the straw is going to go just underneath. And as you start to see the bubble, just bring the straw out of the solution. And already you can see the patterns on the bubble. Next, we've got to place the cap in the right height and the right position. I've got this tumbler and I'm going to put it upside down. And then I'll place the cap on top of that. Just need to be careful that you don't spill anything. Then with the camera, you probably want the view or the position that it's at a little bit lower than it is now. What I want to do is look across the cap and slightly up. So I'll get the bubble and I won't get much else. I am using just the 24 to 70mm. I don't have any extension tubes and it's not a macro lens. So I'm not going to get very close, but I'll get quite close and I'll get close enough to get a good photograph. So I'm going to work out the minimum focusing distance, which is around about 20 centimeters. And then I'll get the camera in the right place, make sure the focus is in the right place using the straw, and then we can start taking some photographs. One other thing, I need to put the flash on a light stand. So I'll do that now. Next, I'm just going to set the camera up as I would when I'm starting flash photography. So I'm going to set my shutter speed to 1/200th of a second. Going to set my aperture to f8 and my ISO to 100. With these settings, with the ambient light that I have, you can see the screen is pitch black. So what I need to do is, if I'm using a manual flash, I would have to change the live view display to off. This is in tab 2, menu 6 of 9. I'm using the Godox. So when I turn the X1 trigger on, you can see it basically turns off this live view display automatically when the flash is on. And you can see that flash logo there. Now the X1 trigger is just out of shot, but I have the flash on 1/4 power. I'm going to set my focus by holding the straw upright at around about 1/3 of the way in to the lens cap. Then I'm going to go to manual focus. I'll use the magnify tool. And then I'll turn the lens dial until I see that straw in focus. Now I'll just blow a bubble into the solution, make sure I've lined the camera up correctly, and then take a photograph. From that, you can see it's really overexposed. So what I'm going to do is drop the flash power. I've dropped it down to 1/16, so that's a 1/16 of the full power. Now on that bubble, I've got good focus. I've framed it up okay, but you can see because that flash head is so small, it's producing just a pinpoint flash on the side of the bubble. And this is where I need some diffusion to get that light much bigger above the bubble. So now I've got the 60 centimeter Godox square diffuser up, but you can see it's in the shot. So I'll take a shot and I'll show you what happens when you do have this in your background. You can see I've got much better coverage on the bubble, and also this top bit in the frame, that's obviously lighting up as a big white strip. So with that diffuser in the shot, it creates that white strip along the top. So what I've done is raised it up, and I'll take another shot. So because that light is further away from the bubble, it creates a much smaller white area on the top of the bubble. So we need to change this. I'm going to use my second technique with this 60 centimeter diffuser. So what I'm going to do is take it off the light stand and hold it manually. Then I can get it a lot closer to the bubble. So this needs to be about here, but I can't have this back bit getting into the back of the shot. Now with this technique, it's okay, but you don't have much control over the light. You're putting it in and pulling it out. You can move it around, but once you find a good position, it's really hard to replicate that. And that's where, if you've got a boom or a C-stand, this really helps. Then you can mount that light exactly over the top and you can get it in exactly the position that you want. So that's what we're going to do next. The great thing in using a C-stand or a boom is that you can have the light in place and then you can play around with that bubble. If you actually blow on it, you can get the swirls to be more dramatic. As well as this, you can change your settings to suit. If it's too dark, increase your flash power or open up the aperture. And if it's too bright, close the aperture or decrease the flash power. I went from 1/200th of a second, f8, ISO 100, to a little bit overexposed. So I closed down the aperture and I ended up going all the way down to f16 and I upped my ISO to 200. If you want to keep your ISO lower, you can then double the amount of power in the flash. Now I'm going to try out my extension tubes. I'll start with the smallest one, which is 10mm. With this you can get closer, so either move the camera towards the glass or the glass towards the camera and use the straw to get that focus point again. You might have to take a few test shots to get it right, but be patient and slowly dial in your settings and your focus. You can see with the 10mm extension tube, you can get a bit closer and fill more of that frame with the bubble. Now for the 16mm extension tube, this gets you closer again, so check your focus and then take some more photographs. Now here are the shots I got with this extension tube and the 24 to 70mm lens at 70mm. Like I said before, you can either move the glass towards the camera or the tripod and camera towards the glass. I actually do this to get focus. So I'll dial in the focus point to the closest point and then I'll move the glass so I get the focus spot on the bubble. But you can just do it with your focus dial if you want. Now the great thing with these extension tubes is that you can stack them. So even though I've only got a 10 and a 16, I can stack them and get a 26mm tube. With this you can get really close, but that plane of focus becomes super shallow at the minimum focusing distance. So I'm getting some great shots now, and I've moved the camera back and I've gone to its furthest focusing distance with the two extension tubes. This means that that plane of focus is a little bit deeper and I'm getting more of the bubble in focus. It's slightly smaller in the frame, but it works much better this way. So you just need to experiment moving the camera backwards and forwards, focusing in and out till you get that focusing point spot on. But I'm not done yet. I'm going to try some different softboxes because I think I can get this looking a little bit better. Now I've got a 120 centimeter softbox over the bubble. It's a bit of overkill, but let's see what we can get. It will be a bit tricky to get in and blow the bubble, but let's see. So now I've tilted the softbox up and back, so I'm not getting the back edge in my frame. Now all you want to do is just keep shooting, keep taking photographs, blowing bubbles into that cup, seeing what different patterns you get. And you'll be surprised at how many different looking bubbles you can get. Now this is where an entry-level camera works really well. If you have any crop-sensitive camera, you can get so much closer. Also, if you have a longer telephoto lens, maybe like the 70 to 200, this will get you closer to that subject as well. But I wanted to stick to the kit lens range to show you what you can get with that basic lens. One tip is to blow on the bubble, and what that'll do is it'll really increase those swirls. When you create a bubble, it starts off quite bland, but the longer it lasts, the more it turns into a banded rainbow. So basically all the visible colors are being refracted. Also, the longer you leave it, the more the colors settle. And sometimes you get blobs rising through the bubble. These are black and other times they have a bit of colour to them, but you'll see them rising up through the bubble as the flash fires off and lights up that bubble. And as I've already said, try blowing on the bubble and this will mix up those colours as it does settle. What you'll find is just before it bursts, all the colours will drift right down to the bottom and it'll almost be a black and white bubble. If you can mix the colours into this black and white part before it bursts, it does look really good. I went a little bit extreme with my 120 centimeter softbox, but use what kit you've got. If you don't have kit like this, I'm going to show you a technique now where you can use just the sunlight and get similar photographs. So this is the next setup if you don't have a flash. You need to wait for the sun to come through the window, so I've had to wait till the next morning. What I've got is the camera with the macro tubes. I've got my little lens cap filled with solution. Then I've got this black background. So what that is doing is giving the shot a black background, and then the sun is shining in on where the bubble will be. Now if I get my straw, and I blow a bubble into the solution, hopefully it'll hold. Oh, no. I'll try again. So I'll put the shot on the screen now, and you can see with direct sunlight, again, that light source is tiny. So what you need is a 5-in-1 reflector. So I've got this piece from the center of the 5-in-1 reflector, and all I'm going to do is balance it over the top, like that. Now when I take a photograph, you almost get the same effect. So this is a really cheap way of doing it. All I need is my kit lens and camera on a tripod, one of these 5-in-1 reflectors that you can get off Amazon, and then some extension tubes. You don't need the extension tubes, but they enable you to get your camera a lot closer to the bubble. Now let's talk settings. I've got 1/50th of a second, f13, and ISO 400. So you do have to change your settings around a little bit, but the sun is quite bright, so it will put a lot of light onto that bubble. One thing I am finding is because I'm just using the shutter button and not the quick release, it is shaking the camera a little bit because I am at 1/50th of a second. So I'm just going to go and get my shutter release and see if that helps. Right, now I've got my quick release. Let's see if we can get some better shots with that. So no matter which way you're shooting these bubbles, it's all about experimentation. Play around with your settings, play around with blowing the bubbles and the solution that you use, and then play around with the diffusers that you have as well. Through all of this experimentation, you should be able to get a good, decent photograph. Now with this reflector, if you're holding it handheld, what you'll find is any movements that you have in this from the shake of your hand will transfer across to the bubble. I'm filming a close-up now, and as I wobble this, it's pushing the air up and down because this is such a big surface. And that's why it's better to try and balance it across the top. And then you'll get a perfectly static bubble. Now, if you are using this setup, you might think about using a torch, but what that'll tend to do is put a very small patch on here, unless it's a really widespread torch field. So just look at the torch that you're using or look at the light that you're using. With the sun, we get all of this lit, so it's a really big surface, whereas with, say, a torch, it's not so much. It's just a small circle on that. And that's why the sun is really good to use in this application. So if you're stuck at home, have a go at this soap bubble photography. You'll be surprised at what you can get with quite basic kit. And if you have tried this, let me know how you got on in the comments below. It'll be great to hear about your experiences with this type of photography. Now, if you want to learn more about extension tubes for macro photography, click on this next tutorial here. And if you want to learn about getting macro shots without a macro lens, click on this next tutorial down here. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for weekly tutorials in photography. I'll see you next time.